So real quick, I've been getting some positive feedback on these videos that I've been doing. Now, maybe there are people who hate them. They haven't been vocal yet. I give it time. Anyway, I just wanted to inform expectations, and I made one more, and I think I said it to get published on Sunday or something. But don't expect these. So I'm glad if you get something out of them. But here's the thing. When it comes to what we learn, when it comes to what God can give us, we set the size of a window. So if you want an interesting study, go search for Windows of Heaven. And that's what I'm talking about. You'll see a lot of interesting scriptures there. But the rule of thumb is we set the size of the channel, and then God fills it up. And then it's kind of like a conveyor belt in a factory. We are always the bottleneck. So what is that bottleneck? Well, that could be a long conversation, but it's what we're willing to receive. In short, that's the phrase from the scriptures, what we're willing to receive. And so that can be topical, like, hey, I want to learn more about X, but not Y, and really not Z. Don't you dare tell me anything about Z. So we tend to be like that with God. And it can also be a rate of information. So we can say, I want to learn a little bit, but not today, or just today, I'm interested in learning something, but just leave me alone for the rest of the week or month. And then we can also limit him in the way it's conveyed. This can be a big topic, but for example, some examples of this are, I'm willing to learn something from the scriptures, but not a book that's not scripture. Or I'm willing to learn this from someone who claims to be whatever, a priest, a prophet, a holy person, but I'm not willing to learn this from a child. Or I'm willing to learn this from someone who seems saintly to me, but I'm not willing to learn from someone who has what seem like clear flaws to me. And so all of these things constrain that window. There's another, this is not a complete list. I'm trying to keep this short. There are other things that make that window tighter as well. So one of these things is I'm willing to learn things, but only things that can be conveyed in a certain way. So for example, I'm willing to read up on things, but I'm only willing to read headlines. Well, if you do that, the space of things you can learn about is very small, and it is occupied by things that aren't very complicated, and you're susceptible to being manipulated and tricked into believing things with by the use of buzzwords or emotionally triggering words that the writers know have a strong emotional reaction. And once that gets locked in your brain, it's very hard for you to use reason to overcome that and see things impartially. So anyway, back to these videos. I allow myself to make a few of these because I know that this is the modern way that people are now conditioned to do things, and we expect to drink deeply of all life has to offer through very shallow means, and that's pretty sad and it's false, but we do what we can. But there are many things for which this just can't work. And so, again, like, you're not going to learn all there is to learn through Twitter or even Twitter length comments, right? So here's an interesting fact. Zion will be populated by people who are readers and thinkers. And that's a scary thought to many because they're not thinkers or readers. So, I spend an inordinate amount of time and effort writing these books. I think if people knew what there might be two people other than me who understand partially, at least, what goes into that. One is my wife, who has to deal with the fact that I'm just like never around really, at least in the mornings and the first half of weekends until my brain is fried and then I rejoin the world. And then Cindy Hughes, who edits the books, and she's the voice of the audiobooks. That's the editing she reads through. She spends a lot of time on that, for which I'm deeply grateful. So these people have a lens on what goes into that, but my point is, if there were an easy way of doing it, folks, I'd be all over it. It's just a crazy amount of time and effort. But the reason is I can't come up with a way of doing this that's faster and easier to convey these things. So I find a lot of worthwhile secular books. You can find a talk online where the author gives away the goods, and you can just watch a 30-minute talk and get extract all the information value of this book that they wrote, and then you don't have to buy the book, and then you don't have to take the time to read it. But unfortunately, in the things that I write, I haven't been able to find those situations. So every time I get an idea for a video, and most of the time I get an idea for a blog post, my first question is, does this topic in any way interface with anything in the many books that are in the process of writing? And when it does, I go to those and I write it down. And if it doesn't, or it's something that could highlight some facet of a bigger topic, but it's a more specific highlight, then I have notes files where I write down ideas for videos or ideas for blogs. And I think one day, it might be years in the future, I will write less and record more. But there are a lot of things to do before that day. So yeah, I guess point being, if your window is constrained enough that you can only get things through this means, it's going to be a long time before you get to the good stuff, because that's just going to be in books for the time being. Just to do due diligence, one piece that I did not mention is that we are in a society where people are made an offender for a word, so to speak. That's a scriptural phrase. And what that means is that folks won't really make any effort to understand your perspective, what it is you're saying, and the reasons you give for saying them. Instead, they're just looking for a way to dismiss out of hand what you said, or write off what you're saying or doing with the least amount of thinking possible, because their minds are already made up, and they're just looking for a way to soothe their conscience. They're not actually interested in knowing what's right or what's true or what's valuable. So in this age, the more ammunition you give people, the more damage they'll be able to do. And so making videos, or even writing blog posts, when you try to take something that's big and complicated and simplify it as much as you can, or just break it down to bold points, people are going to take advantage of that for the worse, and then just sort of take something out of context and then blast it all over the internet. Ask me how I know. Now, it can't be avoided, and it's not like you're going to hide in a rock instead of going out and saying the things that you believe. But you have to be wise, and you have to think about the most effective way to put out information. And as far as I understand for right now, that way for me is to write big, everything you need to know about it, books and people are very slow in reading those. They're very dense, so they have to read them multiple times to get everything out of it. And they just don't set aside a lot of time to do that. And so I expect that I'll be through writing books while people are still chewing on things that I wrote a long time ago. And it'll take quite a while for people to catch up. And so I don't think videos, even if things like YouTube are around at that point, which is an open question, and even if they're not viciously censoring ideas like the ones I will be talking about, which is also a long shot, it's just not feasible to think that the videos will ever be a replacement for the books. So thanks to, again, Cindy's efforts in doing the audiobooks, which are extensive, it's unbelievable. They're easier to access that way because you can listen to the audio and not just read the text. But I still think you lose something compared to reading. But anyway, that's probably as accessible as it's going to get, at least for a while. So I've made this video too long, but I hope that informs expectations. Don't think that, you know, you can just subscribe to this channel and get anything close to the information content that you would by reading the books.